the existence of God. Okay, is there a God or not? Well, the atheists, and by the way, I debate atheists on my show all the time. I think about some of the atheists that I've debated on my show. Christopher Hitchens. You guys remember Christopher Hitchens, the British guy, wrote the book God Is Not Dead? He actually died a couple of years ago. So he's a believer now. He is. Let's be honest. His knee has bowed and his tongue has confessed. Jesus Christ is Lord. I've debated Richard Dawkins, Dan Barker, Daniel Dennett, American atheists, Michael Shermer, Victor Stenger, the astrophysicist. I mean, you go on down the line. I enjoy debating these people. I do. What they will do is they will, when selling the idea of God's existence, they'll put us on the defensive. And they'll say, you have to prove to me there's a God. Present him to me. Give me your scientific evidence that God exists. Because it's your job to prove to me there's a God. And then what we do is we get on the defensive, and then we go, well, you can't prove there's not a God. And then they win the debate at that point. Because then they say, you're trying to make me prove a negative. You can't make someone prove a negative. That's like me saying to you, prove to me that there's not a purple monster living on the other side of Mars. Technically, you can't prove he's not there. But that doesn't become evidence that he's there. So see, we end up losing debates because we say, well, prove to me there's no God. You can't do that. So what I do is I turn it around. I turn it around on the skeptic. And I say, I don't want you to prove to me there's no God. I want you to prove to me scientifically that a universe can spontaneously come into existence from nothing. I want them to give me the scientific evidence to back that up. Because see, I got the laws of physics on my side. How many of you ever heard of something called the First Law of Thermodynamics? So several of you have heard of that. Good. First Law of Thermodynamics. Within the First Law of Thermodynamics is something called the conservation of energy law. Now this is a scientific law. Just like gravity is a law, this is a scientific law. I'm using science. I'm not quoting the Bible. I'm using science. Right? Conservation of energy law says this, that you can't create energy and you can't destroy energy. Energy can be converted into different forms of energy. Energy can even be converted into matter. But however much total stuff there is, you can't increase the total amount, you can't decrease the total amount. You can only change its forms. So however much total stuff there is, you have to keep that much stuff. Which means, if at one time, 13.8 billion years ago, there was nothing, the conservation of energy law within the first law of thermodynamics says scientifically, nothing must stay nothing. It's scientifically impossible for nothing to turn into something, let alone turn into everything. Again, I'm not quoting Scripture. I'm just giving you a scientific fact. Nothing cannot turn into something. So I say to the atheist, you believe that nothing turned into something. Well, since you say that we should just pay attention to science, I'd like you to scientifically explain to me how nothing turns into something. In the no God scenario, because we've got two scenarios. Either there is a God who doesn't have to obey the laws of physics, he can make something out of nothing, or there's no God, the no God scenario. You, Mr. Atheist, skeptic, you're on the no God scenario side. So since you're in the no God scenario side, I want you to explain to me from the no God scenario how nothing turns into something. Go. And then I just wait for their answer. See, I'm going to put them on the defensive. I'm not trying to make you prove to me there's no God. I'm not trying to make you prove to me that prove a negative. I'm trying to make you prove to me a positive. I want you to prove to me how nothing turns into something, violating the laws of physics. See, they can't. They can't. Scientific law is actually on our side. And by the way, that doesn't even get us to the other issues that they have to deal with, like the second law of thermodynamics, or abiogenesis, that once this matter comes into existence, how does inanimate matter suddenly become alive? That's also not scientific. No basis for that at all. Now, I do want to say, for the atheist who wants to argue that there's no God, Here's what he may say. So I'm just in case there's any atheists in here, if you're thinking about bringing this up, I'll head you off at the pass, okay? And I'll address it first. Some of them will argue, well, we didn't go from nothing to something. The universe always existed. So all the matter and energy in the universe that there is has always been here. So therefore, you don't need a creator to create it. It's existed for all of infinity, for all time. How many of you in here have heard of something called the Second Law of Thermodynamics? Anybody heard of the second law? Okay, some of you have. This is where the second law comes into play. This is also a law of physics. The second law is a heat transfer law. It basically, heat will, what you'll have is heat will move to a quarter body toward a state of equilibrium, ultimately in a closed system. I'll simplify it this way. If I take a cup of hot coffee and I sit it here, and I take a cup of ice water and I sit it here, the temperatures are different, right? One's hotter than the other. Eventually, what's going to happen to the temperature of those two liquids? We all know, right? Eventually, they will become the same temperature. The heat will eventually transfer and be lost. Eventually, they will become room temperature. Okay? That's the second law of thermodynamics at work. This isn't some theory. This is scientific fact, scientific law. Any atheist acknowledges this as true. So, if I walk in a room and I see a cup of coffee and I see a cup of ice water, if they are both room temperature, they're both the same temperature, I can't tell you how long they've been there. However, if the coffee is still hot and the ice water is still cold, the second law of thermodynamics says this: it is a proven fact that they have not been there forever. That's not possible, right? Everybody follow me on this, okay? What we know scientifically is that they haven't been there forever. With that said, let's go out into space. What are stars? They're like our sun, balls of fire. What are comets? They're balls of ice. Wait a minute. Hot things in the universe are still hot. Cold things in the universe are still cold. There's a disparity of heat in the universe, isn't there? You know what that means? That means you can debate all day long how long the universe has been around. There's one thing we know scientifically for a fact. It's impossible that it's been here forever. So when that skeptic goes, well, maybe the universe has been here for all time, forever. It didn't need to be created. Oh, really? Well, let's talk about the second law of thermodynamics. And so when you present that to them, and then you say, so I'd like you to explain to me scientifically, how can the universe have existed for all time and not experienced heat death yet? Why hasn't equilibrium been achieved yet? Why are hot things still hot and cold things still cold? That's a violation of the laws of physics. So how do you explain that? They're going to back off of that and go back to, well, we don't know how the universe was created. You don't know, I see. So you choose to put your faith in a belief that the universe somehow whoosh, created itself? Does it really make sense to put your faith in? I told Christopher Hitchens, I said, we both have a faith belief system. We both have faith. Okay, I have faith in God. You have faith that the universe somehow made itself. He goes, I do not have faith. That's absurd. I said, no, it's not absurd. You do have faith. Because you can't prove it scientifically. There's no basis for believing that. Yet you still just choose to believe that it made itself anyway. And there's no way to scientifically prove that. And he said, well, yeah, but someday in the future we may scientifically discover something. I said, in other words, you're having faith in some yet undiscovered scientific discovery that will somehow explain this. You have faith in that. Well, guess what? I also have faith that someday Jesus is going to come through the clouds and prove you all wrong. All right? But you're going to call that a faith, so why can't I call what you have a faith that someday some scientist will show a way that a universe can be created? How is that not a faith? Waiting for your answer.